Mesichta Rosh Hashanah. Gemara says in Mesichta Rosh Hashanah in Daf Yud Amud Beis and in Daf Yud Aleph that Yosef Yotza mi Beis HaAsurim B'Rosh Hashanah Yotza Yosef mi Beis HaAsurim. That Yosef was imprisoned. We learned in Chumash Yosef was in the Beis HaSoyar. In Chumash Bereshis we learned Yosef was imprisoned in the Egyptian prison. Says the Gemara that Yosef was Yotza, Rosh Hashanah, Yotza Yosef mi Beis HaAsurim. And the Gemara derives this from Psukim, and that is as follows, in Kapitel Pei Aleph, Pei. So the Gemara says in Shabbos Daf Kuf Daled that the letter Pei is Peh. And Pei Aleph, that means Harchev Picha V'Amaleyu. That means a Haisafa on the Pei, that is Pei Aleph, that's Tufshin Pei Aleph. All right, so you find in Tufshin, in Kapitel Pei Aleph in Tehillim, you will find the Gemara brings a couple of times throughout Masechta Rosh Hashanah this kapitel to show how we see the Inyan of Rosh Hashanah is alluded in this kapitel, in this chapter. But before we get to that, let's just focus on Yosef. So the Gemara says that he was released from his imprisonment on Rosh Hashanah. Says the Gemara, it says in the pasuk as follows. It says in Kapitel Pei Aleph, Tiku b'chodesh shofar b'kesa l'yom chagenu. That's referring to Rosh Hashanah because that's when we sound the shofar. And b'kesa l'yom chagenu says the Gemara, Ezeu chag sha'chodesh miskasa boy. So the way Rashi explains this to mean, and also the Tosfos, Rabbeinu Meshulam teaches this different, but plainly Rashi says, b'kesa l'yom chagenu means that this is a Yom Tov which comes out. L'yom chagenu b'kesa. That's when the moon is concealed because it's the first day of the month. So Ezeu chag sha'chodesh miskasa bo Ezeu Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara goes on to say, it says, Ki choyk Yisrael hu mishpot le'elokei Yaakov. That's when there's the judgment, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu judges the Am Yisrael and the Umas Olam. And the Gemara goes on to say as follows. What does it say in sequence to that pasuk? It says, Eidus b'Yehoshua samoi b'tzeisoi al eretz Mitzrayim. That means in the same kapitel in sequence it says that he made this day a testimony for Yosef when he went out al eretz Mitzrayim. And like it says, there's a pasuk in Keheles that Yotza mi Beis Asurim limloich. In other words, he was freed from prison. So from there, the Gemara says, derives from the smuchin, from the sequence of the psukim, that Yosef was released from the imprisonment on Rosh Hashanah. And this is also found if you have a Mikrois Gedolos. So in the Das Kain Mibali HaTosfos, it also says, now where do we, in the Das Kain Mibali HaTosfos on the pasuk, Vayigalach Vayichalef Simloisov. If you'll take out your Chumash in Parshas Miketz, be so kind. I'm sorry, I should have told you in advance. In Parshas Chumash Bereshis and Parshas Miketz, so you will see where it says that he was taken out. Vayiritzu Vayishlach Paroi Vayikra Es Yosef Vayiritzu Min Abor. That's Kapitel Mem Aleph, Pasuk Yud Dalit. So Paro sent and summoned Yosef, and they rushed him from the pit. And he shaved his hair and changed his clothes, and he came to Paroi. So it says on Vayichalef Simloisov, says the Das Kain in Mibali HaTosfos, that is Bigematria that has the numerical value as Be'echad B'Tishrei. Vayichalef Simloisov is the same numerical value as Be'echad B'Tishrei. And he says the fact is Simloisov, that's what he brings. It's also brought in the Sefer Hadar Skainim from the other from the Bali HaTosfos. The facts are that the Das Kainim, he raises an issue and he says that it's the Simloisov is written Choser Vav, it's missing a Vav, so it doesn't seem to match up. But the Das Kainim says we have the rule of Yesh Eim LeMikro, will go according to the way it's read, and it's read Simloisov as if it has a Vav, and therefore that's the numerical value of Be'echad B'Tishrei or B'chad B'Tishrei, depending on this text of the Hadar Skainim or the text of the Das Skainim B'Bali HaTosfos. Okay, so according to that, when we read in the Chumash, Vayiritzu Min Abor Vayigalach Vayichalef Simloisov, That's telling us, according to the Gemara, that being that he was released from his imprisonment on Rosh Hashanah, so this all occurs on Rosh Hashanah b'pashtus, and therefore not in vain. The Rishonim and Achronim Meforshei HaMikra asked the question: how is it possible that on Rosh Hashanah, when he is released from his imprisonment and he's taken out of the pit from the Beis HaSoyar, it says Vayigalach. Vayigalach means that he gets a haircut. How can you get a haircut on Yom Tov? And this shaila is already brought by the Rishonim, the Moshav Skenim ala Torah. There's such a sefer Moshav Skenim. I'm not talking about the old age homes where Nebuch they needed a refuah shlema. I'm talking about the sefer Moshav Skenim from the Bali HaTosfos. So he asked the shaila, they were Mekayim the Torah before the Torah was given, like we find in Bekesher to Yosef, Tfoyach, Tevach, V'hochein, the Mela by Shchita, Dina Shchita, etc. So if so, how was it possible that he was Mechal Yom Tov? So the Moshav Skenim himself and also Rabbi Yankov Mivina want to claim that being that it's for royalty and there's a shaila, there's a sakona, sakonas malchus, there's a sakona, there's danger if he's not going to come all dressed up and all well-groomed, so there's a sakona of malchus. In other words, he has to respect royalty, and being that there's danger in relation not to respect royalty, therefore, that permitted him to be megaleach b'yom, and this is found in the Moshav Skenim and Rabbi Yankov Mivina. Also, others, Rabbi Chaim Paltiel in his Pirush, who was a Talmud Chava of Maram Rutenberg, also addresses this, and he has a different take on it. Rashi Lamaisa on Vayigalach Simloisav, Rashi says Vayigalech. So Rashi says Vayigalach mipnei koved hamalchus. Rashi says he takes the haircut, he takes the shave, mipnei koved hamalchus, due to royalty, to respect, out of respect for royalty. Now the Chsam Sofer ala Torah, if you have a Chsam Sofer ala Torah, says the reason why Rashi says mipnei koved hamalchus, Rashi was bothered and he meant to ask the shaila. Being that the Gemara says that it's on Rosh Hashanah, how was he able to be Mechal Yom Tov? Says the Chsam Sofer mipnei koved hamalchus. And what's the heter? Says the Chsam Sofer, the heter is as follows. Being that to keep Yom Tov, they weren't commanded him to keep Yom Tov. That was something they took upon themselves. But to respect royalty, they were already at the time obliged to respect royalty, and he brings a different psukim for it. As we see, Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Yidden, in relation to Paroi, that they have to respect Paroi, etc., etc. So B'meila Vibal, to respect royalty, they were commanded in at the time. And not to be Mechal Yom Tov, it was something they took upon themselves. So therefore, there was no shaila that they were allowed, Mitzat Koved Malchus, to do it on Yom Tov. That's his take, and that's what he says. That's what the Rashi means to say, Mipnei Koved HaMalchus. And also, if you'll take out a Tshuvas Chsam Sofer and Ner Chaim, Siman Kuf Nun Tes, you'll see there he also brings this Rashi, and he says, Mipnei Moira Malchus, there is permission, there's a permit. One is allowed, so to speak, to there's a need at times to be to shave, and this is actually that shuv is more connected to what the Bar Tanura says, because the Bar Tanura, in his commentary on Rashi called Amar Nekei, he has a commentary on Rashi, not just the Mishnayos. So in the Pirush, the Bar Tanura on Rashi, he says that Rashi, when he learned, says in the Chumash Vayigalach, it seems that he's also shaving. How can you shave? How are you allowed to shave? God forbid, you're not allowed to shave. Board, pays with a board. Are you allowed to shave? So he says that being that he wasn't the one who actually shaved himself. And you take out an interesting in Ibn Ezra, he doesn't bring the Ibn Ezra. But the Ibn Ezra says, Vayigalach ham megaleach, the one who was megaleach, and the Baba did it. So the shaila is only that he is a nikif, he's not the makif, he's not the one who's doing it, someone else is doing it on his behalf. So he's merely a messiah, and he's a messiah, he's only, so to speak, he's allowing himself it to be done to him. So he says it's only an Issa D'Rabbanan, says the Bar Tanura, and therefore, this was allowed. So he approaches it, the shaving, but I'll call upon him. And like I say, the Tshuvas Chasam Sofer also addresses this topic. But going back to we're not going there. We're going to talk about the Chil Yom Tov. So like I said, the Rishonim and Achronim talk about it. So the Chasam Sofer al Torah says that's why Rashi says B'Koved HaMalchus, and also the Gerer Rebbe, Rabbi Avram Mordche from Poland, who came to Eretz Yisrael who was Nifter 1948 in Shavuos. So in his Sefer Imri Emes and the Likutim, and on Rosh Hashanah, Masechta Rosh Hashanah Daf Yud, so he also says the same reason as the Chassam Sofer, and he says this, I believe, and I understand in the Rashi. Lamaisa bepoil, if you're interested, and even if you're not interested, in Lekuta Sichas, in the Lubavitcher Rebbe Sicha, Lekuta Sichas, volume 35, the Rebbe explains this Rashi al pipshuta shel mikra. He doesn't, even though he references the Chassam Sofer, but he goes and explains it in pipshuta, and he says vayigalach over here doesn't mean the regular haircut, because he says inmates used to receive haircuts even when they were in prison. This vayigalach kavod hamalchus is because of kavod hamalchus. That's why he had to take a special. It was a special professional haircut. And that's why Rashi doesn't explain Vayichalif Simloisov, because it's poshut that he had to take off his prison clothing. He had to change them because that's disrespectful for the king. So definitely, what Rashi says, that's Pshuti Shel Mikra. That's why Rashi says when they cover the mouth, it's not because of Rosh Hashanah Dafka. And the Rogatchover Gaon himself has his own take why it says how it was possible to say Vayigalach. The Rogatchover himself brings the Targum, where the Targum says Vayigalach doesn't mean that he actually used a razor. It doesn't mean the shave. It means merely a trim of his hair, because he was a Nazir Olam, and B'meila, therefore, because he was a Nazir, that's the sheet of the Rogatchover. He was a Nazir, so therefore yearly he had permission to trim his hair, and therefore the Rogatchover says, being that it was a Rosh Hashanah, so every Yud Beis Chodesh, why it has to be Rosh Hashanah is a separate issue. But he says Lepoel, every Yud Beis Chodesh, he's able to what? He's Mekel B'Sara, he's able to trim his hair. That's why the Targum says, and Vayigalach V'Safar, that he trims his hair, he doesn't actually use the razor. I'll call upon him. So you see, based on this, that it's Rosh Hashanah, so these Rishonim and Achroinim go out of the way to explain how can it be Vayigalach, but it's quite poshut. We're going back to the Gemara, where the Gemara says that Yosef was released from his imprisonment on Rosh Hashanah. Now, if we read the story, let's put that in context of the parsha. And in context of the parsha, we read that this comes in sequence to Paro's dream. Paro Melech Mitzrayim has a dream, and it says, "Vayhi mikech nosayim yomim mufari choylem v'hinei omed al hayar," and he's dreaming at night. And he has this dream, and during the night he dreams about the cows. And after he has the dream about the cows, he gets up and he sees it's a dream. And then he gets up and he gets up in the middle of the night and he has another dream. He goes back to sleep and he has another dream a second time. And what does he have? He sees ears of grain sprouting from one stalk, etc., and all the different details of the second dream. And he gets up and he realizes it's a dream, and then in the morning, Vatipoem Ruchoi, he's agitated about the dream, and Rashi and the Rabban explain why Dafka in the morning is he agitated, etc. I'll call upon him, but if we say, and it's like the Gemara says, that what occurred with Yosef is Dafka on the day of Rosh Hashanah, B'meila Lefizeh, Paro's dream takes place B'leil Rosh Hashanah. Paro's dream takes place in the night leading up to Rosh Hashanah. That's when Paro's dream takes place. And interestingly, in the Iyun Yankev on Masechta Rosh Hashanah, he explains this, that the reason why Yosef was imprisoned for 2 additional years, because he says to the Sarah Mashkim, the Sarah Oifim, he says, if you learned in the end of Parshas Vayeshev, he says to him twice, his Kartani, if you'll remember me, and he mentions it twice, the union of Zikaron. The Mela, therefore, Vibaldi relies, Rashi brings this, Vibaldi relies on the Sar to remember him. So therefore, that's why he was he was punished for additional 2 years. And that's why Dafka on Rosh Hashanah, says the Iyun Yankev, which is the Yom HaZikaron, Dafka, therefore then, Pari has his dream, and Pari is therefore remembered for what? That he should be released, because it's the Yom HaZikaron, and that comes to take the place of what he said, his Kartani originally. Also, the Svasemes, if you take out of the Svasemes in the Likutim ala Torah, the Svasemes at the beginning of Parshas Miketz, he also comes to this conclusion, which is quite obvious, like we said, that it seems, he says that the dream of Pari was in the night of Rosh Hashanah. He says because the Gemara says that Yosef went out of the Beis HaSurim, he went out on the day of Rosh Hashanah, so the dream was at night. And he says that also is alluded in the pasuk where it says Vayihi Vayehi miketz shnosayim yomim, says this Vasemes. It's known when it says Vayehi miketz shnosayim Vayehi. So Vayehi is alluding to the pasuk where it says Vayehi hayoim. Vayehi hayoim. It says in Eiv. So the Chazal say Vayehi hayoim. It's Yoima Didino Rabo. That's the day of Rosh Hashanah. So that's hinted in what it says Vayehi miketz. That's referring also to the day of Rosh Hashanah, and also Rabbi Reuven Margolius, in a Sefer Netzutzei Oyer on Masechta Rosh Hashanah, and in a Sefer Sha'arei Zohar also elaborates that it's derived and understood from what it says, Vayehi Miketz Shnosayim Yomim. Okay, the Sfas Emes continues on to say in Parshas Miketz that that's the reason why Paro is very agitated in the morning. After his dreams, he gets very agitated. The Torah says, Vatipoem ruchoi. He's very agitated in the morning. Why is he so agitated? So he brings to our attention what the Maharsha says in Masechta Brochos, in Daf Yud Ches Amud Beis, and in Masechta Brochos, in Daf Nun He Amud Aleph. Take a look at the Maharsha in the Chidushei Agodos. And there he says that the Chaloimos of Rosh Hashanah are very true. They're not stam dreams ba'alma. One who dreams on Rosh Hashanah, that's where they're very true dreams. They're not baba maisis, even though there's always some truth to a dream. But dafka, the dreams of Rosh Hashanah, there's a lot of truth to them. And they are miskayim, and they become fulfilled. The mela, therefore, Paroi, that's why Paroi in the night of Rosh Hashanah is all nervous. Why? Because the dreams are on the night of Rosh Hashanah, and therefore he's agitated. Because the night of Rosh Hashanah, if you dream, those dreams come true, and therefore he wanted to know what's exactly the interpretation of those dreams. And this is a halacha lepoil. The halacha is in Shulchan Aruch, take out of Shulchan Aruch, Hasim Tovkuf Tzadik Zayin, in Hilchas Rosh Hashanah, it speaks about if one dreams on the night of Rosh Hashanah, so if he fasts a tainis cholim, etc., because there's a Kabbalah that if he fasts a tainis cholim and once for a bad dream on Rosh Hashanah, he has to fast that way for the rest of his life on Rosh Hashanah. And there's a whole discussion about the dreams of Rosh Hashanah. Take out of Shulchan Aruch, Hasim Tovkuf Tzadik Zayin, Hilchas Rosh Hashanah. So in conclusion, we're concluding without going back to all those details. If you want to have more details, you can take a look. If you have a Sefer Paneach Rosa from the Chachmei Ashkenaz, so I mentioned this once before, that the son-in-law of the Maharal Prague has glosses on the Paneach Rosa. So in the Paneach Rosa and Parshas Miketz, he elaborates and speaks in detail about this inyan of Yotze Yosef and Beis Asurim, and that's why Paro's dream was dafka the night of Rosh Hashanah. Let's move on. I'll call upon him. This in that the Rosh Hashanah, that Yosef went out of Beis Asurim on Rosh Hashanah, is not just an historical fact. It's not just a historical fact. It's also negei lahalacha. That is found mefurish in Mesichta Rosh Hashanah. Daf Lamed Amud Beis, says the Gemara in Mesichta Rosh Hashanah, that when Rosh Hashanah comes out to be on Thursday, so the fact is that the Shir Shel Yom, if you take out, we know daily we have the Shir Shel Yom, what the Leviim sang in the Beis Hamikdash by the wine, when they poured the wine libations on the Mizbeach. So the Shir Shel Yom for Thursday is the Kapitel Memalef Lam Natzech Alagitis La'osav Harninu Lelekim Uzeinu. So the Gemara discusses and tells us that what happens if Rosh Hashanah is on Thursday, and the Eidim, the witnesses came in the morning to testify that today is, that they saw the new moon on the 29th night, the night leading to the 30th day. So therefore the 30th day becomes Rosh Hashanah. So already from the morning, they know that the later afternoon it's going to be Rosh Hashanah. So therefore in the morning, the song the Levim sang in the morning is only, they say Hasiroisi Misevel Shichmoy, they don't say the whole, even though it's Thursday, so you should be saying the whole kapitel. Nevertheless, they should be singing the whole kapitel. Nevertheless, the Gemara says they only say a couple of psukim. They say Hasiroisi. They start off with saying Hasiroisi, and that's by Shachris. And by Musaf, they will say the whole kapitel, the whole chapter of Peyalav. So it's not regarded as if they're repeating it, because in the morning they only said, they started off from the middle, from the Posuk Zayin, Hasiroisi Misebel Shichmoy. And the afternoon, by the Musaf, they will be saying the whole kapitel. But says the Rashi explains that the reason why we say the Posuk Asiroisi Misevel Shichmoy, if Rosh Hashanah is on Thursday in the morning, the reason we say it is because Yotza Yosef mi Beisa Asurim. Yosef went out from imprisonment, from Egypt's imprisonment. In B'meila, that's the meaning of Asiroisi Misevel Shichmoy, which means remove Misevel Shichmoy from my shoulder. Sevel this load, and this is referring to Yosef being imprisoned in Egypt. B'meila, that's why we say Dafka this capital on this day. So we see. And this is also, like I say, recorded in the Rambam, also in Hilchos Tmidin and Musafin, Perik Vav Halacha Tes. It's just that according to certain texts, the Rambam may have learned a bit different than Rashi. So therefore, there's a discussion in the Mefarshei Harambam there. And some want to say that the Divrei Harambam coincides with the Gemara, and some want to say that the Divrei Harambam coincides with the Talmud Yerushalmi, not with the Talmud Bavli. But whatever the case is, the Dasar, it's clear in the Rambam that we say the Hasiroisi, which, like I say, according to Rashi, it's clear that's because Yotza Yosef and Beisa Asurim, so it has implications in halacha. And just to conclude, in this singing, the Vilna Gaon in his Sefer Ma'aser Rav, he wants to say that the Shir Shel Yoim for both days of Rosh Hashanah is the Kapitel Pei Aleph Harninu, which that Kapitel talks about, like the Meforshim on the Ma'aser Rav and the Vilna Gaon's Minhagim. They explain for two reasons. Why does the Vilna Gaon say that that's the Shir Shel Yoim for the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah? Number one, we mentioned, because it contains the Psukim which refer to Rosh Hashanah, number one, and it also contains the Psukim, the Pasuk which refers to this, that Yotza Yosef and Beisa Asurim. Okay. We're moving on. So after we've concluded this introduction, the Rogatchover goes on and expounds on this yesod, that Yotza Yosef mi Beisa Asurim on Rosh Hashanah, and the dream of Pari was the night before, leading up to Rosh Hashanah, meaning the night of Rosh Hashanah, the night which tomorrow is the Rosh Hashanah day. With this, he explains in a most fascinating way the way different expressions, different lashonos, and the way the Torah is describing what's happening with Pari. But he first introduces what the Mishnah says in Masechta Rosh Hashanah. The Mishnah says in Masechta Rosh Hashanah, after Zayin Amud Aleph, says the Mishnah, Barba Prokim Ha'olam Nidon, there are 4 times, there's times through the year that the world is judged for different things. Okay, we'll discuss some of them as we go on. And the Gemara says, the Mishnah says, Rosh Hashanah, on the day of Rosh Hashanah, Kol Bo'oi Olam Ovrin Lefonov Kivnei Moroin, that on the day of Rosh Hashanah, all of mankind pass through Hashem Kivnei Moroin. There are 3 interpretations, definitions of the Gemara, what Kivnei Moroin is. The Rambam in the commentary in his Mishnah mentions the one definition, and that is that they pass through like a flock of lamb, meaning, and Rashi explains, what does that mean? Just like lambs, when you have to tithe the lambs, so they have to go through a small opening, so therefore they can only go through one at a time. So the same, every individual person is judged on this day as every person is judged on this day as an individual. There is an individual judgment for each individual person of mankind, every individual person. And as the Sefer HaChinich says in Parshas Emor, that's the reason this is alluded. What's alluded in the Mishnah with this example is to tell us that there is individual divine providence for mankind, even though the Chekri Yisrael want to say when it comes to the other species, there's a Hashgacha Klolis, but when it comes to human beings, so then there's a Hashgacha Protis, and that is what is alluded, that the judgment is for each individual person. So, and the Rambam explains, what does that mean? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes a cheshbon, weighs up for the person, and he judges the person in relation to health, that he will be healthy, if God forbid, if he won't be healthy, and for life or death, and other needs of the human being. That's what he's judged on this day, and the Gemara derives it from Sukkim, that the day of judgment is the day of Rosh Hashanah, as mentioned before, the Pasuk the Gemara brings it from. Okay, now, the Gemara makes it very clear in Masechta Bavli, in Masechta Rosh Hashanah, in Talmud Bavli, Daf Ches Amud Beis, says the Gemara that the day of judgment is not just a day of judgment for Am Yisrael, but the day of judgment is also a day of judgment for all of mankind, even for Ummah Olam. And we will go into the details of it later on, but in the meantime, that's the general message of the Gemara. The Gemara derives it from a pasuk. The Gemara says, we know it from the pasuk. The pasuk says, Ki choik li Yisrael hu, Mishpat leilokei Yaakov, so Chokli Yisrael, that comes in sequence to what it says, right? Chokli Yisrael, who? That goes on the Am Yisrael, and Mishpat leilokei Yaakov, that Elokei Yaakov is judging the mankind. That's a day of judgment for all of mankind, as Rashi explains. And the Gemara explains it. This is what the Gemara says in Bavli, and it's also Mefurish and Talmud Yerushalmi, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is done as Yisrael, and also the Umois found in Masechta Rosh Hashanah, Perek Aleph Halacha Gimel. And this is actually quite obvious in the Lashon of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says in Rosh Hashanah, it says, Kol bo'ei olam, oivrim lefonav kivnei moron. So that's bo'ei olam. And the Rambam records this Lashon of the Mishnah. This Lashon of the Mishnah is found that oivrim lefonav kivnei moron, that's in the Piyut, that's in the hymn of Unisana Toikev, what we say in the Machzor of Rosh Hashanah, but also the Rambam in Ilchas Shuvah Perek Gimel Halacha Gimel, the Rambam says, just like we weigh the merits of a person and his sins at the time of his passing, the same every single year, a person's sins are weighed. Each individual person's sins are weighed with his merits, etc., etc. B'yom Tov shel Rosh Hashanah, says the Rambam in Yehoshua Perek Gimel Halacha Gimel, and the Lashon of the Rambam is called Echad v'Echad miboei ha'olam, like the Lashon of the Mishnah miboei ha'olam, which in the language of the Rambam is quoted frequently throughout the Rambam. When he brings that Lashon, he's referring to what? Even to the Umois ha'olam. The Mela says the Rogatchover Gaon. If we understand now, after we've just proven and explained that the dreams of Paro take place. When do they take place? The night of Rosh Hashanah. And after we've now just explained that the judgment for mankind is not just for Am Yisrael, but also for Ummah Ha'olam, including Paro Melech Mitzrayim. B'meila, when he dreams this night, his dreams are quite serious and they're very meaningful because it's the night of Rosh Hashanah. That's the time when he is aware that Hashem is judging him and is judging his people and he's judging his nation. And in Be'ela Vibald, he's being judged tonight and his people are being judged. So therefore, he's all aggravated and agitated about the meaning of his dream. And that is also the message. What is the interpretation of the dream? The interpretation of the dream is all about the sustenance, in other words, the livelihood, which is the nourishment and the sustenance of mankind. And that's about the cows and that's about the ears of grain. What does it all symbolize and what does it all reflect? That's all reflecting what will be the hashpah and the parnasa of Mitzrayim. Will it be in a mode that everything will be in a mode of satiation? It will be soiva, or there will be famine. And B'meila, therefore, he's agitated and he wants to know what's the definition of his dream and the interpretation of his dream. Now says the Rogatchover Gaon, with this we can appreciate also what the Torah Hagdosha tells us. And the Torah tells us what his dream. His dream takes place that he sees himself al haya'or. He sees himself on the Nile or near beside the Nile, like the different Mefarshim explain what's the meaning of al haya'or. He's actually on the Nile or beside the Nile, etc. I'll call upon him. Now, plainly, because he's dreaming about the nourishment of the sustenance of the Mitzrayim, so plainly that's why it's Al Haya'or, because as Rashi says, being that there wasn't regular rain in Mitzrayim, and therefore there was the irrigation system, that the whole of Egypt was made Ya'orim, different canals of irrigation, which is bringing the water from the Nile into Egypt. So therefore, the source of all the life, of the nourishment, of the sustenance, the water is coming from the Nile. B'meila, therefore, b'pashtus, that's the reason why it says that he dreams that he's Allah Ya'or, like it says in different Mefarshim. Take a look at your Rashi, take a look at your Ramban, take a look at your Rabbeinu Bechaya. Also in the Pirush of Rabbi Yankiv Emden in the Sefer Eim Labina, a newly published Pirush of Rabbi Yankiv Emden from the manuscript, he explains too the reason why all the dreams, his dream takes place Allah Ya'or, and also when he conveys his dream to Yosef HaTzadik, he also talks about all about the Poros and the Shibolim coming out of the Ya'or, because the that's the source of shefa for the Am Yisrael, for the Bnei Mitzrayim. Okay, also, for those who have a chance, we'll take a look at the Bnei Yisachar from the Heilige Dineve. He in Chodesh Tishrei, remember, Beis Chavdalad. So there he also has a discussion, Dafka, why the Torah highlights that he's Aymed Ala Ya'er, etc., and other Mefarshim deal with it. The Rogatchover Gaon, in context of our discussion, that Yosef is taken out of imprisonment on the day of Rosh Hashanah, and Paro's dreams occur in the night of Rosh Hashanah, which then he is being judged by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why he is agitated about his dreams. What is the meaning of those dreams? Dafka, because those dreams are very true. Because he's being remembered on the day of Rosh Hashanah and being judged. Says the Rogatchover going, that's why we understand and we can appreciate why the Torah says, V'hinei oimed al haya'or. And he explains this based on what is explained and analyzed in the Morah HaNevuchim from the Rambam. In the Morah HaNevuchim of the Rambam elaborates and explains that the term, from one of the Jewish philosophers in general, and the Rambam in particular, in Morah HaNevuchim, in Chelik Beis, Perik Yud Beis, and in Chelik Aleph, Perik Samach Tes, he explains that the concept, the word shefa, which would mean hashpah, that means all the nourishment, all the energy. So energy or shefa can be described in relation to Hashem, that Hashem is mashpia, Hashem gives shefa. And that shefa, the term shefa, could be either something tangible, it could be something gashmi yizdik, it can also be something ruchni yizdik, it could be energy, etc. Or life, or sustenance, but it could be life too, and that's the meaning of shefa. And that's why he says we find in the Tanakh, by the Nevi'im, that in scripture we find that we want to describe when Hashem, the source of hashpah, the source of energy from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the words of the Nevi'im, we describe it as Mikor Mayim Chaim, the source of spring water, of living water. So B'meila says the Rogatchover Gaon, therefore, when we're talking about hashpah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is being mashpia in the teva, and Hashem is energizing the teva and giving life to human beings in a natural way, so this is expressed with the term nor, the stream of water. That's where the energy, that's where the life is coming through. That's coming via the nor. The Mela says the Rogatchover, it fits into the general picture. Here we're putting together the pieces of the puzzle. He's standing at the riverside, or standing on the river. Why? Because that's exactly what the river is reflecting. What is reflected by the river, Nahar, in Torah, the way the Morah HaNevuchim explains it, that is the hashpah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in nature. That's the Mikor Mayim Chaim. And being that this night he's being judged for life or death, for his nourishment, for his sustenance, for him and his people, therefore is Aymed Ala Nor, because all of that energy is coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is reflected in the Mikor Mayim Chaim, in the Nor, in the river. With this, the Rogatchover Gaon explains what it says in Masechta Brachos also. The Gemara says if one has a dream, in general, if one dreams, says the Gemara, and he dreams that he sees in his dream, says the Gemara, if he sees in his dream a nahar, if he sees a river in his dream, whoever sees a nahar in his dream, he should wake up in the morning, right when he arises, he should recite another verse, because the Gemara says in Masechta Brachos that dreams will depend, the meanings of the dreams and how they will be implemented will depend on their interpretation. So the Gemara says, being that he saw a dream, so he doesn't know what the meaning of that nor may be. So the Gemara says he should immediately, when he rises, he should interpret and say, quote the verse, Hinini noita eleh kanor sholom, which means, I will extend peace to her like a river. Before another pasuk comes to mind, which means ki yavoy kan nohar tsar, which means that on the contrary, there will be something negative coming like a river. In other words, you should interpret his dream in a positive way and not in a negative way. That's what you should say immediately, a positive pasuk. Now the Rogatchover says That why? What is the issue? Because when he sees in a dream, he sees in his dream a nar or river that's talking about the hashpah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu based on the Moreh Nevuchim. That's talking about godly energy. Now God's energy, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's energy, Chai and Seluki, could be in a mode that it should be L'toiva, and there should be kindness, and it should be goodness, and God forbid it could be in a negative way. So therefore, the pasuk tells us that if you dream about a nar, you should immediately interpret that that nar should mean that it should be positive energy and not negative energy. So that's the going back. Says the Rogatchover going. So that's the reason. Now, putting, like I said, the puzzle is now completed, more or less, that after he has his dream, and he's all agitated during the night, and he's waiting to have the interpretation of his dream, and it's interpreted like by Yosef interprets it, that it's going to be sustenance for him and his people, and to some degree it'll be in a negative fashion, like we said, the Sheva Shnei Sov, and the Sheva Shnei Srov, and this is dafka told to him in his dream by night, because it's the night of Rosh Hashanah when he's being judged what's going to be with him with the rest of the year and further on. And he's dreaming this dafka by the Nor, which is what? Which is the source of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hashpah for the year. With this, the Rogatchover says a fascinating thing. We all know, right, that there's a minig in Ashkenaz at least, and that's the way the Ramah records from the Maharil, there's a minig to say Tashlich on Rosh Hashanah. This year, we don't say Tashlich the first day. According to the Mishnah Berurah brings the Pri Megadim. By the way, today was the yard side of the Mishnah Berurah, the Chafetz Chaim. So therefore, surely he is Zichrei Baruch, and all those Eloi Mishnah Berurah, and all those who mention Mishnah Berurah, and all those who protect their tongues in Shmiras HaLoshen. So it should bring only a good year for us, and what? His chus, Zolom Zala Beishtein, it should be a Melis Yosef for Klal Yisrael. So the Mishnah Berurah brings from the Pri Megadim, we don't say the Tashlich, we don't go to Tashlich for the first day if it comes out on Shabbos, we say the Tashlich is the second day. The Rav Shulchan Aruch brings the minig of the Ramah in the Shulchan Aruch and also in his Siddur, but he doesn't mention anything about the Shabbos. Nevertheless, the custom in Chabad is also to say the Tashlich on the second day when the first day comes out to be on Shabbos. Just by the way, interesting to note, if you didn't know, the Vilna Gaon didn't go to say Tashlich. Would you believe it? You get it? It says in the Ma'aser Rav of the Vilna Gaon, is Lo Yehoya Hoylech Lenohor Oyle Be'er Loimar Tashlich. He didn't go to a river or to a place where there was where there was a source of water to say Tashlich. And they say, therefore, the Chayodam doesn't record it. But Lamaisa Bepel, the Mishnah Berurah, just records and explains the Ramah and the Shulchan Aruch. He doesn't mention this Vilna Gaon. So if you have some Prushim in Eretz Yisrael who follow with the Menhagei Agra, don't be puzzled or surprised if they're not going to go say Tashlich. But okay, we're moving on. Okay, says the Rogatchover going. Here we go. According to what we've explained, what's the principle? What is reflected in the Ya'or of Paroi? And it's connected to Rosh Hashanah and the link between Rosh Hashanah and the Ya'or and Paroi and his dreams. We can find a remez, a hint for the meaning of Tashlich. Would you believe it? And the words of the Rogatchover reads, Mikan, from this posik in Chumash, remez is a hint, Masha'onu Holchim Lenohor Rosh Hashanah. When we go to the river side on Rosh Hashanah, and we say that we do the Tashlich. Now, the facts are there are many, many different reasons brought in Medrashim, brought in Sforim in the name of Medrashim, from Medrashim, and different reasons why we go to say the Tashlich, to we go to a body of water, either to a river or to a spring, or we're doing it because of the water, because the water is chesed, and we're doing it because of the fish, because the fish is that increases, that shows an increase, and etc. Pru'ervu, so the Yidden should increase, or it shows on Enyet Kicha that they don't have eyelids, etc. All the different reasons brought, also quoted by the Arizal, brought by the Barav and the Alter Rebbe and the Siddur and the Shulchan Aruch, or because of the Akedas Yitzchak, all the different reasons. And there's an interesting sefer. If you don't have it, you can try to find it somehow. It's a kuntris. It's called Pnei Hamayim. It's an old sefer which was published by a Yid who was never murdered by the Nazis. Yimach Shmon v'Zichrom. He was a Yid called Rav Shmuel HaKohen Schwartz from Satmar, and he was never burnt al Kiddush Hashem in Auschwitz. So he penned the kuntras, and he brings very many different customs and reasons. In the Tashlich, he brings also a custom from some Constantinople that they didn't just come and check out their pockets into the Tashlich. They said the Tashlich, they all jumped into the river. You get it? Not there, huh? So if it's a hot day, you'll jump into the pool of water to cool off. So that's a meaning in Tashlich. Don't be surprised if you'll see some people doing it. Okay, but make sure that you should keep social distancing. Don't all go together at the same time. And if you can't make sure to go all together at the same time, you have to go at the same time, so don't go. You go at a time when you're able to have social distancing. But if you need to just make sure, if you feel like you have to have a good wash down, and it's not just good to shake off your tzitzis into or your pockets, so then okay, so do it like they did in Constantinople. All right, and that's brought in the Kuntras Priyamayim, so I'm telling you, it's a novel Kuntras. Get a hold of it. It's a good one. But what's fascinating about this Rogatchover? That is the Rogatchover who knows Kol HaTorah Kula and is busy with the Pilpulim of the Rambam, but he found it important that even when it comes to Minhagi Yisrael, and we've seen this in the past, and many other shiurim of the Rogatchover, that he explains Minhagi Yisrael. And here he's taking a minig Yisrael, which is a minig in Ashkenaz, may not have been in Sfard, and mainly like they see the Vilna Gaon doesn't do it, and certain people take issue with it. And should the women go or shouldn't they go? Everybody has what to say about it, right? So some are for it and some are against it, etc. Nevertheless, the Rogatchover finds and says, this is a hint in the Chumash, this is a hint for it. And what's the hint? The hint is from Paroi. There you go, the hint is from Paroi. Oy vey. So all of a sudden the antennas go up and they're telling me the hint is from Paroi? Oh, that's a terrible hint to find from minig of a helik and minig from the Ashkenaz for Klal Yisrael from Paroi. When the Svorim Akdoshim and the Pri Tzadik, Rabbi Tzadok HaKohen says, excuse me, where we find the inyan of birthdays, right? Mentioned in the end, Dafka in the end of Parshas Vayeshev, right? That's a sequence of Parshas Miketz. Yom Huledes is Paroi, right? And the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Chusi Yogan Aleinu spoke about the importance that Jewish people should celebrate birthdays, not just yahrzeits, but birthdays. And like the Ben Ish Chai says, yeah, you should make a Shechayanu on your birthday. Yeah, because it's a Gevaldik day, you're born again. So yes, Baruch Hashem. So therefore, it's a new year, so you make a Shechayanu. So I'll call upon him. So there it says, Yom Huledes is Paroi. So the people who didn't like the sound of it, they say, oh, Yom Huledes is Paroi. Pas va Paroi. Well, I'm letting you know now, right now, that you should realize that's a basis to Prava Yom Huledes, because it says in the Torah Hagdosha, Yom Huledes is Paroi. So when it says Yom Huledes is Paroi, that means the Torah is telling us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Moshe Rabbeinu are telling us that there's an inyan of Yom Huledes is Paroi, and the Torah is a Torah for Am Yisrael. You get it? So the Rogatchover teaches us now that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that Paroi has a dream, and he's Omed Alai Ya'or, so it's not to claim that it's Paroi going to say Tashlich. No, it's a remes for Am Yisrael to say Tashlich. Okay? There you go. Gewaltige Rogatchover. Let's move on. Now the Rogatchover goes on and elaborates and expounds, and he takes what he says very serious, and he goes on and expounds as follows. He tells us that true, we find in Masechta Krisos and Masechta Horis, Masechta Krisos Davov, and in Masechta Horis Daf Yud Beis, we know very well that there's special food, types of food which were meant to eat in the night of Rosh Hashanah. When Rosh Hashanah kicks in, the Gemara tells us that we have to eat different types of food. We know one of them are beets, some of there's leek and beets, and all the different types which are recorded in the Shulchan Aruch LaHalacha, brought in the Shulchan Aruch, and also in the Rav Shulchan Aruch, and also in the Mishnah Brura. It says in the Shulchan Aruch. So you got to do it, even though I still don't know till today what the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch doesn't record this Mefurish Gemara that these type of food stops. These food types you're meant to have, or at least some, according to certain texts, you're meant to at least have it on the table as a good omen, to at least look at them, and according to a different text of the Gemara, you're meant to actually consume them and eat them. So there's a whole grachke that you eat these special foods on the night of Rosh Hashanah, and the lashon of the Gemara is that one is meant to eat them Reish Shata, the beginning of the year, and the beginning of the year would mean exactly when the year kicks in. That means the night of Rosh Hashanah, we're meant to already eat these simonim, which are like for a good omen, or what the different skulas and different yerotzins we say, which each type, these two different food types resemble different inyonim, etc. For those Take out a Shulchan Aruch, you'll see what it means, etc. We're not going to go there to go into the detail. But I'll call upon him, we do it the first night. Do we do it also the second night? That's a separate issue. There's a whole discussion in Achronim. Some have a custom to also do it the second night. And Mata Ephraim, the Mata Ephraim, who is the sole posek for the different minhagim of Rosh Hashanah, he claims that the minig is not just to do it the first night, but also to do it the second night. The fact is, the Bnei Yisoscha, the Heilige Dineve, Maimer Chodesh Tishrei, he claims that Vibaldi Gemara says, the Gemara says, Reish Shata means the beginning of the year. That means when the night kicks in, that's when you do it. And we haven't seen, he says, from others, from his Kadmoinim, from other Rebbes, other Achreinim say you can do it late. You should also do it the second night. But he claims you only do it the first night. And others already take issue with the Heilige Kedineve in the Pirush Ksei Hamata and the Mata Ephraim, from one of the Achreinim. He claims that Lav Dafka, their minig was also to do it the second night, so everybody should follow their minig. But whatever the case is, the Rogatchover says that we see that already when the night of Rosh Hashanah kicks in, we already are doing inyanim which represent and reflect the day of Rosh Hashanah. Nevertheless, says the Rogatchover, those inyanim which reflect the day of judgment, that Rosh Hashanah is a day of judgment, those things we don't do at night. Those things we do only when the day kicks in, only during the daytime, And here, therefore, he comes and he has a whole controversial thing where he takes issue with what he just presented. He says, what are we saying? That Paroi stands al yad ha'ya'or, he has his dream at night, and he's saying, and this is a remes for Tashlich, that means he's doing his Tashlich when in his dream, true in his dream. But when does he have his Tashlich? He's doing it at night. And what did we say? The Noah represents HaKadosh Baruch Hu's judgment for the mankind, right? Even for non-Jews. That's when Hashem is mashpia and gives the shefa and the chayis and the life for mankind. That's why it's al yad ha'ya'or, by the Noah. That's the shefa, mekor mayim chayim. So if that's the case, says the Rogatchover Gaon, look, we find in the Gemara as follows. The Gemara says mefurish, that in yonim which relate to the day of judgment, it relates dafka to the day. The Gemara says as follows. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Gemara says in Masechta Rosh Hashanah in relation to the judgment of Rosh Hashanah. Says the Gemara, says in the Pasuk, we mentioned the capital Pei Aleph. Right? So says the Gemara, what does that mean? What is the Yisrael? And then it says Mishpat Lekei Yaakov. So that teaches us Melamed She'ein Bezdin Shel Malon Nichnosen Lidin Eleim Ken Kitshu Bezdin Es HaChodesh. You get it? Now when is Bezdin Shel Mila? When is the heavenly court start the judgment? They wait only for when the Bezdin Shel Mata, the court down here, when the Bezdin Shel Mata is Mekadosh the Chodesh, they sanctify the new moon. And when does one sanctify the new moon? You have to wait for the witnesses to come on the 30th day of Rosh Hashanah. And they come, they will only sanctify the dinners. We don't sanctify the new moon at night. We have to sanctify the new moon only in daytime. The Mela, it says Rashi explains, that the day of Rosh Hashanah is a day which depends on Li Yisrael, on the Bezdin. When Bezdin establishes the day of Rosh Hashanah, that's when they make and sanctify and consecrate this day. They sanctify this day, and they say this day is Mekudesh. They say it's Mekudesh, and the Am Yisrael says Mekudesh. We mentioned this last time. And then is Mishpat Lalokei Yaakov. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu judges the Mishpat, which is Lalokei Yaakov, is only, the Bezdin Shel Mila is Nichlas Ladin, only after the Bezdin Shel Mata was Mekadosh the Chodesh. And the Bezdin Shel Mata is Mekadosh the Chodesh only by day, and therefore we know very well also throughout Rosh Chodesh, whenever a person forgets Yalav V'Yovah, on Rosh Chodesh night, it doesn't repeat the Shemona Esrei only by day, because Ein Mekachin is HaChodesh Balayla, because we don't sanctify the new month by night, only by day. Which therefore, by the way, based on this Gemara, there's an interesting Shailas Atshuvas Binyan Shleimer of Shleimer LaHakoyim Mivilna explains a well-known psak from Rabbi Avram Avle from Pasviller, who was an Av Bezdin in Vilna. He was a big Gaon in Vilna, and this is recorded from the Chayodam in the name of Rab Abba Pasviller. who was, like I said, an Rav Bezin in Vilna, and recorded in the Sharat Tzion of the Mishnah Brura in Siman Tov Kuf Pei Beis, in the halachas that we have to, the din is if you have to say HaMelech HaKodesh and HaMelech HaMishpat and Aseret Yimei Teshuvah, the halacha is in the Gemara, in the Psak halacha, that if one says HaMelech HaKodesh, if he doesn't say HaMelech HaKodesh, if he says Okel HaKodesh, he has to daven over. What happens if you forget to say HaMelech HaKodesh the night of Rosh Hashanah, and you say Okel HaKodesh? So do you have to daven over or don't you have to daven over? So listen to what the Chayyim brings in the name of Rabbi Pasveler. Rabbi Pasveler says that you don't have to daven over the night of Rosh Hashanah if you don't say HaMelech HaKodesh. Why? Because you're not Mekadosh the Chodesh until the morning. So it's like Rosh Chodesh. Just like by Rosh Chodesh, if you get to say Alav Yavi, you don't have to daven again. The same if you don't say HaMelech HaKodesh, the night of Rosh Hashanah, you don't have to daven again. And everybody takes issue with this psak from the Chayyim in the name of Rabbi Pasveler, and also the Mishnah Brura himself takes issue with it, and they claim that he didn't see Rabbeinu Yoina, etc. Rabbeinu Yoina Masechta Brachos, which seems to negate everything what he says. But there's a Shailas Teshuvos Binyan Shleima. Shailas Teshuvos Binyan Shleima from Shleima LaHakayim Mevilna. So in Siman Yudches and the Tikkunim and the Hisafis, he adds sense, he gives sense to this psak, and he says as follows. He says this is a Mefurish Gemara. The Gemara says Mefurish that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't judge Am Yisrael unless the Bezin Shalmata was Mekadosh the Chodesh, like we just said. And that's the reason we say HaMelech HaKodesh. Because what is HaMelech HaKodesh? HaMelech HaKodesh means Hashem is Mara Malchusoi Lishpoit Es HaOlam. That's the meaning of HaMelech HaKodesh. He reveals himself, right, from his concealment to judge mankind, because that's why he's called it. We say HaMelech HaKodesh explicitly in our prayers. Therefore, the Baal, the Gemara says, Rav Shlomo Lekam Vilna, that's the meaning of this psak. The Baal, when does HaKadosh Baruch Hu judge? Meaning, when is HaMelech HaKodesh valid? Only after, says the Gemara, only after the Bezin was Mekadosh the Chodesh. So we see clearly from this Gemara that we link the HaMelech HaKodesh that it has the same din of Yalav V'Yavai. And that's the meaning of this psak of Rabbi Pasveler. By the way, Rabbi Pasveler was the Av Bezin of Vilna. I said it 6 times. The Tzemach Tzedek of Lubavitch, when he traveled, this is brought in Beis Rebbe in Chelik Gimel, Perik Beis, when he traveled, when he traveled to Minsk, and he met up with the Radal, and when he traveled to Vilna, he met up with Rav Avila Pasveler, and they spoke in learning, so the Tzemach Tzedek met him. I'll call upon him, even though it's proven. And like I say, Rav Zevin, in one of his Svarim, claims that there's a proof from the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe doesn't agree with him with this psak. And in Divrei Nechemia, from Nechemia Midbrovna, and many, like I say, take issue with it. And if you're interested, there's a Shailas Teshuvos Be'er Avrom, which was published on Masechta Brachos, and also compiled Shailas Teshuvos for Rabbi Pasveler, which was published by Machon Yerushalayim in the year Tavshin Mem. So there on page Kuf Tzadik, you will find a whole lengthy, many references which discuss this topic. I'm moving on. But going back to this Gemara, it's getting late. The Mela says the Rogatchover, Ribal, the Gemara says Mefurish. Now when is the judgment? When do we do in Yonim of judgment, which are negated to the day of Rosh Hashanah? Kick in only by day and not by night. So he says, let it be that we take these different food stuff the night of Rosh Hashanah, because they're all, like we say, it reflects, it's a good omen for the different reasons we mentioned. But whatever relates to the judgment of the day doesn't kick in until the daytime, like the Gemara says. And that's why the Gemara says in Masechta Avodah Zarah Daf Dalet, says the Gemara, that one shouldn't daven in and first say the Tfilas Musaf in the first 3 hours of the day. Because in the first 3 hours of the day, the person is judged. It's very clear from the Gemara that a person is judged by day and not by night before. If so, asks the Rogatchover, and according to that, it makes a lot of sense. That's why when do Yidden say Tashlich? So the meaning of Tashlich is brought that we say it on the daytime. I haven't yet seen. I'm not such a Yid. So maybe somewhere in the world, I've never seen it in my life, that you should say Tashlich by night. Samul gesehen, as I soll gehen suchen Tashlich by night, in my Leben nicht gesehen. Nowhere ever did I ever see such a thing. But I don't know, maybe someone will come up and say, yeah, well, it's very clear from the Minhagi Yisrael, brought in the Magen Avram and the Rav Shulchan Aruch, etc., that the meaning to say Tashlich is you say the Tashlich if the Mincha on the day of Rosh Hashanah before Shkias Achama. Some say there's a whole discussion in Shalas Teshuvos Siach Yitzchak from Rav Weiss, Rav Yitzchak Weiss from Verboy. There's some Yidden out there from the city of Verboy. That's easy. Herzog came from the city of Verboy. He's all called upon him in the city of Verboy. There's a Shalas Teshuvos Siach Yitzchak So there he, in Simaresh Ayin Zayin, if I recall correctly, he claims that he can even do it before Mincha, or can pass, some even do it after Shachris, etc., but you have to do it by day. It's Bepashtus that way, you do it by day. And according to the Rogatchover, it makes a lot of sense why it should be dafka done by day, because the Yin of the Nor is reflecting the Hashef and the Hashpah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Mikor Ma'im Chaim, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Mashpia, all the sustenance for a Yid for this coming year. And that's where we say those tefillis at the Nor. So that's why we're judged by day. That's where we say the Tashlich daytime. Question arises, why is Pari saying Tashlich? He has the reflection. We said this is a remes for Tashlich, and in his dream, where's he dreaming? He's dreaming at night. So what's going on there? What's he doing during the nighttime? So the Rogatchover Gaon is Mechadish Achidish Godel. And the Rogatchover Gaon says, the Gemara says Mefurish that the whole reason that HaKadosh Baruch Hu judges the Am Yisrael by day, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu waits for the Bezdin Shalmata to sanctify the new moon. And the Bezdin Shalmata has to what? Accepts and sanctifies the new moon only by day. So therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu waits for the daytime. Says the Rogatchover Gaon, this is all negaya to Klal Yisrael. It's negaya to Am Yisrael. In other words, Am Yisrael has a halacha. Yidden have a halacha. That even though there's a possibility that according to the calculations, and the Rambam speaks about this in detail in Hilchas Kiddush HaChodesh, that even according to the cheshbon, it could be that the moon, taka the new moon, was taka the night before. Nevertheless, we in Am Yisrael, in the halacha, Yidden have to wait for the testimony of the Eidin, and we have to wait for the Bezdin to sanctify. And here the testimony of the Eidin for the Bezdin to sanctify. Therefore, it has to be done dafka by day. And we don't follow with the cheshbon. It just has to fit the cheshbon, but it doesn't depend on the cheshbon. So that's all in relation to Eden. But when it comes to Goyim, for them, the psak of the Bezdin Shalmata is irrelevant. It's not relevant because they are connected to the teva, to the nature. And because they're connected to the nature and to the teva. So therefore, based on the calculation, if Rosh Hashanah, right? If in the night of Rosh Hashanah, the new moon, there's already the new moon, so you didn't have to wait for the Bezdin Shalmata to sanctify it for tomorrow. But based on the teva and just on the calculation, that's good enough for the goy. He doesn't have to wait for the Bezdin Shalmata. Therefore, for him, his judgment can already kick in at night. It says, therefore, the Rogatchover, therefore, in Para, in his dream, he can dream about the Nor that he's standing about. His judgment takes place nighttime, and it's all about the Nor is all at night, and the definition of his dream also is needed to be known, because that night he's shown in his dream is reflected his judgment, because his judgment as a goy, as part of the Umas Ha'olam, that can take place at night. Mashenk and Am Yisrael, their judgment is dafka by day, like the Gemara says in Masechta, as the Gemara says in Masechta Avodah Zarah, Daf Dalid, and based on the reason what the Gemara says, and Bezdin Shalmata, Hashem waits for the Bezdin Shalmata to paskin. I want to just say as follows. Which, therefore, according to the Rogatchover, it's quite obvious that it can't. We don't say no Tashlich at night, and it doesn't make any sense to say Tashlich at night, unless someone has some other reason to follow and do what you like. I just would like to bring to your attention as follows. The fact is, the Gemara says this needs to be, I would like to suggest as follows, according to the Rogatchover Gaon. From the Rogatchover Gaon, it's very clear that Paroi, the Goy, Umas Ha'olam, the Goy, is already judged the night of Rosh Hashanah, right? But Yid not judged dafka by day. Now the question arises as follows. The question is, the Gemara says mefurish as follows. The Gemara says, in Mesichte Rosh Hashanah Daf Chesam Beis says the Gemara that Yidden are judged on Rosh Hashanah before the Goyim. A mefurish Gemara. The Gemara says we derive it from a pasuk. It says in the pasuk, says the Gemara, where do we know it from? It says in the pasuk, L'choykli Yisrael, who? Mishpat Lalokei Yaakov. So first it says, L'choykli Yisrael, so Yidden come first. And then Mishpat Lalokei Yaakov, then Hashem judges the rest of mankind. So the Gemara says Mefurish, and that's what the Gemara goes on to say. It brings a parable that if a king has to be judged, and the people, the subjects have to be judged, we first will judge the king, and then we will judge the masses, the people, the subjects. The Gemara gives two reasons for it. And the Gemara says that saying the Ritva explains that is a parable and an example also for Yidden and nations, that the Yidden therefore are judged first, and then the nations are judged. But here the Rogatchover Gaon says mefurish fakert. The Rogatchover Gaon says that Paro is judged the night before, and then the Yidden are judged tomorrow. So how does this coincide with the Gemara? So let me share with you what I believe. I would like to suggest the following. And this is as follows. Based on this Gemara, before we come to the Rogatchover, this Gemara seems to be in contradiction to a mefurish Gemara, a mefurish Talmud Yerushalmi. In Talmud Yerushalmi it is written, in Masechta Rosh Hashanah, Perek Aleph Halacha Gimel says the Talmud Yerushalmi that HaKadosh Baruch Hu judges the Jewish people, the Am Yisrael, by day when they're oisik b'mitzvahs, when they're busy doing mitzvahs. And he judges the nations at night when they aren't doing their averos, because they're asleep. So therefore he's judging them in a good way, etc., when they're not doing their mitzvahs, which is their averos. They're asleep. Now, according to that, it comes out that they're judged at night, the nations are judged at night, and the Yidden are judged by day. Now, what's going on here? So how is this coincide with the Bavli? We have a contradiction between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi. The Bavli in Ches Amud Beis just mentioned that what? That Yidden are always judged before the Goyim, before the nations. And here the Talmud Yerushalmi says clearly that Hashem judges the nations when they're asleep, and they judge the Jewish people when they're up. What's happening? So it's in contradiction. So this question is brought to our attention by Rabbi Fleckels in Shailas Teshuvas Tshuva Meyav Achile Gimel Siman Tov Chav Vav, and also brought to our attention by the Sefer Mosad de Yerushalayim from Rav Moshe Aryeh Leib Lich, his surname is Rosenbaum. He was a Dayan in Preshburg, and I believe he's one of the ancestors of A.B. Weisberg, Rabbi Avram Weisberg, yes? Mosad Yerushalayim, I'm a Talmud Yerushalmi. In Masechta Rosh Hashanah, he brings the same question, and he reconciles it the same way as Rabbi Fleckels in Tshuva Mayava, and this is also brought to our attention in the Sefer Sifsei Chachamim. Not the same Sifsei Chachamim on Rashi, it's a different Mechaber, much later than the Sifsei Chachamim on Rashi. So he brings it in the name of the Chassam Sofer. He also quotes from Mosad Yerushalayim, but he brings it in the name of the Chassam Sofer, and this is the reconciliation. He claims, he brings from a Zohar, the Tshuva Me'ava brings from a Zohar, that there was always, from day one, from creation, Rosh Hashanah always had 2 days. So he's up there was always 2 days Rosh Hashanah. And B'meila, therefore, because there was always 2 days Rosh Hashanah, and it's like one long day, it's not something which came about later on in the generations, the way we know it from the Shulchan Aruch and the Halacha and the Gemaras, but no, according to the Zohar, there was always 2 days, and B'meila, therefore, now the both Gemaras are reconciled. Listen carefully. So the Bavli says, in the Talmud Bavli, it says that what? That the Jewish people are judged first, and then the non-Jews, right? Then the nations are judged. And in Talmud Yerushalmi, it says he judges the non-Jews when they're asleep at night, and he judges the Jewish people when they're awake. So he says, Vibal, there are 2 days Yom Tov. Oh boy. The Mele, he says that the Jewish nation, the Jewish people are judged by day, right? And the nations are judged the night following the day. The night of the second day Yom Tov. That's the Pshat. So then everything's reconciled. Both Gemaras are reconciled. There's no contradiction between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi. But it's very clear, so according to that, the nations are judged after the Am Yisrael. But according to that, we have to move quickly. But it's very clear from the Rogatchover Gaon that he doesn't accept this reconciliation. He surely says, no. Paro has his dream in the night of Rosh Hashanah, like we just explained. And Yosef is what? Is redeemed. It goes out from his imprisonment because, like the Mefarshim say, he was remembered on the day of Rosh Hashanah. That's why he's judged on the day of Rosh Hashanah. And that's why he's released from his imprisonment on the day of Rosh Hashanah. And that's why we say our Tashlich by day and not by night. So the Rogatchover says mefurish that the Goyim are judged before. So how does it coincide? So he surely doesn't accept this reconciliation, number one. Number two, how does it follow with the Bavli? I would like to say as follows. Firstly, B'chlal, you should realize, to say that there was always 2 days Yom Tov Rosh Hashanah is a Chiddush Gadol, and therefore we'd rather not learn that way. And that's B'pashas the reason why the Rogatchover doesn't learn that way. So we learn Kipshuta. And the Rogatchover would learn as follows. Listen carefully. The Rogatchover says Mefurish. What does the Rogatchover time? Rogatchover says that how do we know that Hashem's judgment is by day? Because Hashem says, I will judge the Jewish people. It's because I will wait for them to be Mekadosh the Chodesh. So that reason alone, that shtickle Gemara alone tells us that Goyim can be judged before. Because the Rogatchover explains that the whole reason we need to have the Bezdin to sanctify the new moon, that is only negate Am Yisrael. That's why HaKadosh Baruch has to wait for the daytime. The mail itself understood from this piece of Gemara itself that what? That goyim who don't need to wait for the sanctification of the new moon are not judged. Hashem doesn't have to wait for the daytime. He can already, once Rosh Hashanah, the night kicks in and the cheshbon follows, so the mitzias of the day is already there, so therefore they're already judged from the night. So dafka, the reason in this, according to this Gemara, will convey to us and alludes to tell us that goyim can be judged the night before. And actually, it's two brises in the Gemara. In Chesed Beis, one brise says that the reason why the Jewish people are judged only by daytime, because Hashem waits for them to sanctify the new moon. That's one brise. And there's another brise which says, based on the pasuk, another Tanya Achrita says the Gemara. There's another brise which teaches us that the Jewish people are judged first and then the non-Jews. So it could be the first brise that doesn't follow with the second brise in this respect. And Dafka, according to the Rogatchover Gaon, it follows very well with this Talmud Yerushalmi. And generally, according to the Rogatchover, that's what really counts when it says in Talmud Yerushalmi. In Talmud Yerushalmi, it says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu judges the Goyim by night and he judges the Yidden by day. And the pastors that Gemara is not talking about the night, meaning the night following the day. It means the night preceding the day. That's the way we know night and day. It means the night of Rosh Hashanah. And B'meila, therefore, according to the Rogatchover, this section of the Talmud Yerushalmi will coincide with the first brise of the Talmud Bavli, and that's the meaning where it comes out that Paroi is judged before Yosef, before the Am Yisrael is judged. I would believe, that's my suggestion in reconciling this Rogatchover going. We're moving on. The Rogatchover continues on to elaborate and discuss this Inyan. We're saying that the whole dream of his is because it's the night of Rosh Hashanah is being judged about what's going to be with Paroi and his people. But the fact is, it says Mefurish in the Mishnah that when there are four periods in the year, when four sections, four times of judgment. There's judgment for mankind, then there's a judgment for the fruits of the tree, the judgment for water. Fruits of the tree is on Shavuos, the water is Sukkot, and for the grain is on Pesach. So what's going on here? It's clear in the Gemara that when does HaKadosh Baruch Hu judge the world for what will be, if there'll be the harvest will be in abundance or not? Hashem judges it on Pesach, not on Rosh Hashanah. And what is Paro's dream in the night of Rosh Hashanah? All about the nourishment of the sustenance and the food stuff which will be needed for what? For Paro and his people, right? If it will be in a mode of soiva or rav, if it will be famine, if it will be, they will be satiated. So we know it's very clear from the Mishnah that the judgment for grain, right, is dafka on Pesach, and it's not on the night of Rosh Hashanah. So what's going on here? And here we're saying his dream takes place on the night of Rosh Hashanah, is being judged then. But look what his dream is entailing. His dream deals with the grain and the sustenance of Mitzrayim. So the Rogatchover says that this could be reconciled based on a Tosfos. Tosfos in Masechta Rosh Hashanah brings to our attention the known Gemara. The Gemara tells us in Masechta Rosh Hashanah, Masechta Brachos Daf Yud Ches, the story where Maisa b'Chosid Echad. Maisa, Erev Rosh Hashanah, this Chosid gave the last dinner left in his pocket. He gave it to the poor man. His wife provoked him. Oivei. So the Gemara tells us, what does he do? He leaves the house. His wife provoked him. He doesn't know what to do with himself. So he wants a Shabi Shalom Bayis. He walks out of the house. And the Gemara says he goes and sleeps in the Beis HaKvoros. And don't forget, realize this Gemara takes place before Uman came about. But nevertheless, Pashtus HaGemara, it comes out that he goes and stays overnight in the Beis HaKvoros. On the night of Rosh Hashanah, well, the Marsha on the spot says there's no way we can explain this Gemara and take it at face value. We must say that when the Gemara says that his wife provoked him when he gave the last penny, and the Marsha explains they were actually mamish, they were really poor, because Maisa b'Chosed Echad would be Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Loi, like the Gemara says otherwhere, or Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, but Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Loi was mamish. He was mamish very poor, and therefore his wife provoked him. Why did you give your last penny? But you gave it away to the poor man, and we had nothing left to eat. So the Marsha says, it says that he went to sleep in the Beis HaKvoros. Says the Marsha, this all took place in a dream. There's no way that he actually slept overnight in the Beis HaKforos on Rosh Hashanah. That's no way to spend your Rosh Hashanah. You don't spend your Rosh Hashanah. I'm not talking about Ummah now, excuse me. I'm talking about Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Loi in the Gemara. Marsha says it was a dream. He's dreaming that he's in the cemetery. And what does he hear? That's according to the Marsha. Others don't learn that way. Others learn Kipshuta. That it actually takes place and he's actually sleeping in the cemetery overnight. Okay, but it seems from the Gemara that this took place the first night of Rosh Hashanah. What does he hear? He has these two ruchos, these two spirits, which are discussing, let's go see, travel, go see what's going on behind, not the iron curtain, but the curtain up there, Lamaila, and let's go see what kind of judgment will be for the harvest of this year. And, oh, wow. So Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Loi in his dream, according to the Marsha, hears that they come back and she reports that they see that the judgment will be that there's going to be a hurricane and there's going to be hail and it's going to wipe out whoever sows and plants in the first period of the rain period, it's going to kill the crop. And okay, wonderful. So because he heard this from the two spirits in the cemetery, so he makes sure that he sows his plants not in the first period, and everybody else's crop was ruined, and his crop ended up being in abundance because he heard these two spirits discussing what went on the night of Rosh Hashanah. The second year, he already, on his own accord, he doesn't wait for a provoking of anything. He chose himself to go there because he found out all the inside information the year before. So now there's insider trading over there. Okay, so next year he goes out there and he hears the same conversation. The two spirits are talking, two young girls, Nebuchadnezzar young, and they're talking, and one flies around, then she goes into behind the curtain and she hears the judgment, and they speak about the second period, the rain period, what's going to be with the crop, and it's going to ruin the harvest, will be a lousy harvest. So he makes sure to sow in his plant in the first harvest, and everybody else goes rots, and he's successful and he has an abundance. His wife wonders and asks him, how do you know about it? Anyway, he tells her the secret. And then somebody said, take out the Gemara in Masechta Rosh Hashanah Daf Yud Ches. So Tosfos says, this took place in the night of Rosh Hashanah. If it took place in the night of Rosh Hashanah, what are we talking about? Harvest and grain. Harvest and grain, judgment of harvest and grain only takes place on Pesach. And it seems like this dream takes place in the night of Rosh Hashanah. So Tosfos asks the Shaila Masechta Rosh Hashanah, what's going on here? And Tosfos answers as follows. Tosfos answers that it would seem from this Gemara in Masechta Brachos that even though the judgment takes place for the harvest, for the crop, it takes place on Pesach for the grain, but nevertheless it's mentioned on Rosh Hashanah. What was and what will be for Pesach? What will be for the past Pesach? What will be with the harvest of the past Pesach? And what will be for the new grain which has to be sown for the next Pesach? And that is already mentioned Lamaila on Rosh Hashanah. So that's the sense. Tosfos explains this case with the two spirits. The Mela says the Rogatchover Gaon, when it says in the dream of Paroi that he hears all about, in his dream of Paroi on the Rosh Hashanah, he seems to be dreaming about grain and harvest, which really should take place on Pesach. But Tosfos himself says that we mention it, Lamaila, on the day of Rosh Hashanah, even though we're not judging him on that day, but we mention it on the day of Rosh Hashanah. So therefore it can make sense that on the day of Rosh Hashanah, when Pari is being judged, we will mention the grain, even though the judgment for grain will be Dafka on Pesach. Lamaisa Bepoil, all the Mefarshim discuss exactly what took place in that dream. Did they actually hear about the judgment that night? Because it seems from the Gemara that the judgment of the grain took place at night of Rosh Hashanah, and we just finished saying that the judgment takes place only daytime. So the Aruch Laner asks this kasha on the Gemara, and also other Mefarshim ask this kasha on the Gemara. Rabbi Yosef Engel and Masechta Brachos asks this kasha on the Gemara. The Ma'aseh B'Poel, there's the Munkatcher in his Sefer Divrei Torah, Madura Aleph, Oy Samach Daled, wants to claim based on the Zohar that this story takes place the night which is mentioned. When it takes place, that it says that he went to sleep in the Beis HaKvoros, he claims that he didn't actually go to sleep. He slept in the Beis HaKvoros, but he went to sleep there, not the first night. The first night he slept in the shul of the Beis Medrash. But the second night of Rosh Hashanah, based on the Zohar, he went to sleep in the cemetery, and that's where he hears the Spirit speaking about the judgment? Because we finished saying, we already mentioned earlier, that the judgment is dafka by day. So therefore the spirits find out what Hashem judged by day. But that's all the take of these Mefarshim. The Rogatchover definitely learns this Gemara Kipshutai, that everything is being judged at night, or the mentioning Lamaila, what will be the judgment of Pesach occurs all at night, and therefore Pesach, the night preceding the day of Rosh Hashanah, that's when Paroi has his dream. With this, we conclude this discussion. The Ikir, what the Rogatchover concludes, he says, this, all of what we discussed, this is what the Torah wants to tell us. This is unbelievable. This is what the Torah wants to tell us. And I believe the Rogatchover is bringing to our attention what is a known Zohar. The Zohar says that lav mili, it's lav orcha, the malka lishtoi b'mili dehedyoita. The Zohar HaKadosh says that it's not the norm that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should speak about mundane things. So therefore, what's the meaning that in the Chumash we find that HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks about what Lavan said, and speaks about what Pari said, and speaks about what the Miyul said, and speaks about what Bilam said? What's going on? HaKadosh Baruch Hu in his holy Torah speaks about such mundane things. So the Zohar HaKadosh says, it passt nicht. So surely there must be some secrets there. So therefore it's like it's known. But it says in Shalom HaKadosh and also in the works of Rabbi Pano that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is medaberes ba'elyonim and meramezes b'tachtonim. That we shouldn't take Torah at face value, and really whatever Torah is saying, is Torah is alluding and telling us the real thing, the way it is Lamaila. And we just see it reflected the way it is in our world, in our domain. I'll call upon him the Rogatchover going in his own words, right, in the halachic context. He says this is all. These are the words of the Rogatchover going. The words of the Rogatchover going is This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to teach us. We've learned now many different inyanim from this pasuk, says the Rogatchover going. We found a remes for Tashlich. We've also learned another gewaltige thing, that Am Yisrael has to wait for the judgment dafka by day, because it's dependent on the sanctification of the new moon, and that's when HaKadosh Baruch Hu judges Am Yisrael. Am Goyim, the nations don't have to wait for the sanctification, and therefore that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us in the Chumash, that Paro is choylem. He has the dream the night before Rosh Hashanah, before the day of Rosh Hashanah, because he's able to be judged the night before Rosh Hashanah. With this we end. You should all have a good gebenched year. Aksivoch sibeteva, Lashana teva, Mesukah, in which Shetaka be niskayim, we Shetaka be fulfilled. What the Rebbe says, that Shtavshim Pei Aleph is Shnas. Whatever you all said, plois arenu, which should be taka wonders in a revealed fashion, or like he says that the pandemic should be over, or pay should be again. Whatever you say, all, and it's known. Whatever is written in Rosh Tevis, in acronyms, so all of them may be true. So all the good ones should taka be fulfilled. And it seems that I would believe at this stage, this is the last year for this year, and Emir Hashem for the new year, we will Emir Hashem meet again after the Yom Tovim, after Chodesh Tishrei, because all the next Sundays are all either Yom Tov or Erev Yom Tov or Motzei Yom Tov, etc., as you will take out and see in your calendar. So thanks for coming and thanks for having a good gebench year. Aksivoch sibeteva, Lashana teva, Mesukah, Yashikoyach, Menshi Schneier for organizing and helping and doing all the technical work. The Schuzol der Beistein, and L'chaim v'levrocha, have a wonderful year and a wonderful night, L'chaim.